Over the history of Brawl Stars, we've witnessed the release of some truly unstoppable brawlers, those that changed the meta the moment they were released. Whether it was their overwhelming stats, overpowered abilities, or the way they dominated the meta, some of these overpowered brawlers left a lasting impact on both casual players and the competitive scene. In today's video, we'll dive into the stories behind some of these releases, analyzing what exactly made them so powerful and why fans developed widespread frustration against some of them. From their releases to the countless nerfs that finally balanced some of them, we'll explore how these brawlers shaped the meta at that time and changed up strategies. We'll also dive into what place of the meta they are right now. Are they below average? Above average? Still overpowered? You will find all these answers in this video. Starting with the weakest OP brawler released to this date, the 8th place is taken by no one other than Hank. Hank was released on 7th of June, 2023 during the Rumble Jungle season featuring Maisie as the chromatic brawler of the season. Hank was part of the Deep Sea trio alongside Otis. The meta at that time was dominated by Shelly and Meg, both of them receiving a buff and a rework in the Rumble Jungle update. Shelly received a movement speed buff. From a normal movement speed, skipping the fast movement speed, she got a very fast movement speed in the update, which made her way too dominant. Shelly was on top of the meta. Every Power League match back then had Shelly banned and, if not banned, instantly picked. This one small change made her the queen of the Rumble Jungle meta. Meg, who was also striving in this meta, received a rework, which made her respawn in her mecha, but decreasing the health and removing the health decay on her mecha. This was also extremely overpowered as Meg's mecha was already overpowered enough, and now she respawns in it. But talking about newly released brawlers, Hank joined the game during this time. As you probably know, Hank is for a long time already at the bottom of every tier list. You might be asking yourself how Hank fell off so hard. While Hank's bubble mechanics doesn't seem very strong, he was full of bugs and because of that completely busted at first. The first bug was that Hank's supercharge rate didn't scale with the damage he dealt. This meant that Hank was able to charge his super with the same amount of bubbles no matter how inflated they were. The second bug was that Hank's super dealt the same amount of damage, even if you leveled him up. This made him deal the same amount of damage at level 1, but also at level 11. The third bug was that his super dealt more damage than it should deal when used in close-range combat. This made him, of course, overpowered against other close-range melee brawlers like Shelly, for example, who is better at close range. The fourth bug is that Hank dealt too much damage if he was getting buffs like Power Cubes or 8-Bits Turret, for example. One Power Cube made him deal way more damage than he is supposed to deal, which was also a factor that made him strong in Showdown. The bugs were not the only thing that made him strong. Hank's star power, It's Gonna Blow, made him 20% faster when he charged his bubble over 80%. 20% more movement speed is huge for a tank, and Hank benefited from this on release. As you can see, Hank dominated the first few days. Supercell noticed the Lil Tenant dominating with bugs and immediately nerfed him and fixed bugs. On June 12, 2023, 5 days after release, they emergency nerfed him as the following. His health was decreased from 6000 to 5000. In addition, his damage was nerfed too. His minimal damage went from 500 to 450. The other values were respectively nerfed too. With this update, they fixed all of the 4 bugs which were mentioned. Unfortunately, this did not stop Hank from being a good brawler, which is why he was nerfed again on June 27, 2023. The first nerf was that Hank is visible while charging up his bubble. This made Hank less stealthy because enemies would spot his bubble charging while he's in a bush or in Sandy's super. The second nerf was Hank's It's Gonna Blow star power. The movement speed gained was reduced from 20% to 10%. The third nerf was to his supercharge rate, going down from 3 full bubbles to 5. And finally, the nerf that hurt Hank the most. To this day, he is suffering in the low tiers because of this single nerf. Hank can no longer regenerate health while charging his bubble. This small-looking change changed everything for the poor shrimp. He went from being one of the best brawlers to the worst. After this balance change, he was dead last, even behind Frank, who was very trash at that time. To this day, Supercell buffed Hank 7 times again to make him viable, but he is still chilling in the lows of the meta. Being scared of the Hank domination again, Supercell is buffing him very carefully only by a little bit. The next brawler that dominated the meta on release is on 7th place, and it is Sprout. Most of you probably don't remember Sprout being so overpowered. I mean, who thinks a plant with a wall mechanic is good? Edgar can eat it, and Miko can just stand on top of it, and he is immune against Sprout damage. Here are the reasons. Sprout was released on April 10th, 2020. Its kit was back then a bit different than what it is today. Its star power, Overgrowth, increased its attack splash size, if not hit an enemy. It also wasn't affecting a shot every 5 seconds, but every shot. This means that if Sprout missed its shot, its attack will splash over double the size of his normal attack, making enemies easier to hit. This was a guaranteed hit almost every time for Sprout. The next thing was its gadget. While this was not a very huge reason why Sprout was OP, it certainly had an impact on it. Its gadget, Garden Mulcher, healed at 3,000 health, which was quite strong back then. And one of the biggest reasons why Sprout was annoying was his super, the wall. At that time, enemies could not destroy the wall in any way if they don't have any kind of wall break ability. Invincible enemies as well. This led to many Sprout players just trapping their opponents in their spawn in Brawl Ball while easily scoring a goal. Like Hank, 5 days after Sprout's release, Sprout got hit with 3 nerfs. Brawlers with invulnerability shields can now destroy Sprout's hedges, which made trapping players in goals not possible anymore. The second nerf was to its gadget, healing at 2,000 instead of 3,000 health, and the last nerf was to its overpowered star power Overgrowth, where the explosion radius was decreased by 50%, so cut in half. These 3 nerfs made Sprout actually balanced, and looking back to these nerfs, they hit Sprout's strengths the best. The spawn trapping, the attack that almost always hit an enemy, and the survivability around bushes. Although the hardest spots at Sprout have been nerfed, Supercell kept nerfing it. On May 13th, 2020, they nerfed its damage, and on July 2nd, 2020, they reworked its Overgrowth star power by adding the big splash on every attack, not only on attacks that didn't hit enemies. In addition, they added the 5 seconds cooldown to the star power and Sprout's supercharge rate, reducing it from 5 hits to 4. Nowadays, Sprout has already received a hypercharge and is chilling in the B tier, so nowhere near his OP original state. On 6th place, we have Buster. The name already implies that Buster is busted, and he certainly was on release. Buster's playstyle revolved around his shield, which could block any projectile, making him one of the most resilient and terrifying brawlers in the game. His super montage, which lasted a full 6 seconds on release, was a game changer. During this long duration, Buster could reflect all kinds of projectiles, from Piper shots to Rico bounces, allowing him to move towards enemies with almost no risk of taking a significant hit. One of the unique elements that added to Buster's tankiness was his Kevlar Vest star power, which provided an additional 20% damage reduction and immunity to crowd control for the entire duration of his super. Combined with the long-lasting shield, this damage reduction and immunity to control effects turned Buster into a fortress on the battlefield, capable of withstanding high levels of punishment and punishing opponents who dared approach him. His utility belt gadget further amplified his playstyle by healing him and any teammates within his shield radius by 1,000 health for each teammate in the radius. This made Buster also a support brawler, especially in modes like Gem Grab and Brawl Ball. With his shield up, Buster could push objectives, clear paths, and keep his team healthy, making him a must-pick in team-based modes. His healing potential and high survivability created immense frustration for opponents, who often found it difficult to deal with him even in well-coordinated team setups. The second gadget, Slow Ammo Replay, which was released a few weeks later, was even stronger, pulling and slowing enemies which got caught in his strong attacks. At that time, the World Championship 2022 was taking place, and before the start, Buster was hit with some nerfs that made him a bit weaker in preparation for the finals. On November 15th, 2022, Buster was hit with nerfs that aimed to curb his dominance. His health was decreased from 5600 to 5000. His main attack damage was decreased from 1700 to 1580, and his supercharge rate was decreased. The first gadget was nerfed, healing 500 instead of the initial 1000. The second gadget was not out at that time, which is why it wasn't nerfed yet. After these 4 nerfs, the World Finals took place and Zeta Division 0 won it. They even used Buster quite a bit. Just look at the following clips.
Now he's locked in. Buster coming in, and I really do like this comp on both sides, the side of Zeta Division 0. But here we go. These two teams waste no time in meeting in the middle. Kuru's got to be forced back first. Take cover, already popped there by Moyagoku. The bouncing shots affecting Achapi now as the super takes out that box, and Achapi's already fallen. Kenji realizes he can't forge too much further ahead after losing Moyagoku, but the ball's in a good spot for Zeta Division 1. They're happy so far. Yeah, I'm just going to play this one around a little bit. Try to earn some utility. A nice block there from Kuru, and everyone really on the side of Zeta Division 1 going down here. The pass surely going to come through. Oh, the stun. Achapi there just with the support. Beautiful start. So one thing I think people forget is that while Buster is using his super, he can also auto-heal if he's not taking that damage, right? So he's healing, he's deflecting damage back, he's charging at you, closing the gap. Nothing Kenji could do once Kuro got in his face, but Achapi's gone down early. Shitapo approaches the goals, Moyagoku's healthy.
But after the finals, Supercell still decided to nerf Buster even more. His health was decreased again from 5000 to 4800, and his damage too, from 1580 to 1480 at close range. But this wasn't it. A month later, he received more nerfs. His damage went down again from 1480 to 1320. His supercharge rate was increased from 3 hits at close range to 4 hits at close range. His super's duration was to be adjusted, dropping from 6 seconds to 3 seconds, drastically reducing the length of time he could keep up his shield. Lastly, his star power, Kevlar Westcott, decreased from 20% shield to 10%. Buster received 10 nerfs in the first 3 months of his release, making him a well-deserved 6th place on this list. In June and September of 2023, Buster received buffs again after falling down the tier lists. Since then to this day, Buster has received 5 additional nerfs. On 5th place, we have Leon, a brawler who made an entrance when he was released during Brawl Stars' global launch in December 2018. Leon quickly became infamous for his unique and overpowered ability to go invisible all over the battlefield. His super was the cornerstone of his dominance. Upon release, Leon's invisibility was far stronger than it is today. Back then, enemies couldn't detect him even if he was standing right next to them, making him a silent assassin without any chance for the enemy. His super also lasted 10 seconds, giving him much time to maneuver around the map, sneak up on unsuspecting enemies, and secure key eliminations for the team. Leon's damage output at release was nothing to scoff at either. His close-range attacks dealt significantly more damage, and his supercharge rate was faster, allowing him to cycle his invisibility more frequently and maintain constant pressure on the enemy team. This combination of high damage, extended invisibility, and a fast supercharge rate made Leon an unstoppable force in various game modes. Whether it was Bounty, where he could pick off opponents without fear of retaliation, or Gem Grab, where he could control the mine and eliminate gem carriers, Leon's impact was felt throughout the meta. Adding to the chaos, Leon's super wasn't just limited to ambushing players. His invisibility also worked against Ikei turrets in game modes like Siege and the newly added Spirit Wars, allowing him to bypass them with ease. This gave him a unique edge in these modes, where defensive structures often dictated the pace of the game. Leon's ability to sneak past these turrets made him an even bigger threat, as he could exploit the map's defenses in ways no other brawler could. However, Leon's reign didn't last forever. Just 2 days after his release on December 7th, 2018, Supercell released a nerf that allowed enemies to detect him if he got too close during his invisibility. This was the first and a very good step in balancing his overpowered state, giving players a chance to at least have a chance against his sneaky plays. But this was just the beginning of a series of nerfs aimed at balancing Leon. On January 29th, 2019, Leon's attack damage was reduced from 500 to 460 per blade at close range, and his super duration was shortened from 10 seconds to 8 seconds. These changes were significant, reducing his burst damage potential and the time he could be invisible, making it harder for him to dominate matches. But even with these nerfs, Leon remained a formidable presence, prompting further balance changes in the months to come. On February 27, 2019, Leon's close-range damage was further reduced to 440 per blade, and his supercharge rate was slowed, requiring 9 blades instead of 8 to fully charge his invisibility. These tweaks made it more challenging for Leon to maintain his invisibility loop and reduced his effectiveness in close-range combat, where he previously excelled. The nerfs continued on April 15, 2019, when his super duration was decreased again, this time from 8 seconds to 7 seconds. One of the impactful changes came on September 18, 2019, when Leon's super was modified so that it no longer worked against IKE turrets. This change removed his ability to bypass defenses in Siege, significantly reducing his utility in those modes. The final major nerf came on October 23, 2019, when his super duration was decreased once more from 7 seconds to 6 seconds, bringing his invisibility to a more balanced level and solidifying his place in the meta as a less dominant option. Leon's release remains one of the most memorable in Brawl Stars history, a time when he reigned as one of the top brawlers. His initial overpowered state, marked by unparalleled invisibility, high damage, and strategic versatility, made him a nightmare for opponents. Although numerous nerfs have since balanced him, Leon's original dominance left a lasting impression on the game. At 4th place, we have Charlie, one of the most infamous brawlers to ever haunt the Brawl Stars arena. Released on November 6, 2023, Charlie entered the scene as a force to be reckoned with, boasting a kit that quickly turned her into one of the, if not the most overpowered brawler in the game's history. Her defining ability was her super, which unleashed a devastating cocoon that could trap enemies, making them drop all their collected gems in modes like Gem Grab. This single ability turned the tides of countless matches, leading to frustration and uproar in the community. This bug or feature still exists, and also existed in the Soul Collector game mode, where players who collected souls would drop every soul they already collected when cocooned. But that wasn't all. Her spiders, summoned by her super, were exceptionally durable and dealt massive damage, acting as both offensive and defensive tools. They shielded Charlie from single-target threats like Piper, allowing her to dominate from mid-range to long-range. Charlie's impact was immediate and overwhelming. Just 3 days after her release, on November 9, 2023, Supercell had to step in with emergency nerfs. Her super duration was reduced from 10 seconds to 7 seconds, and her first star power, which damaged Cocoon players, was halved from 50% to 25%. Despite these changes, Charlie's dominance remained intact. Her presence was so oppressive that during the 2023 World Finals from November 24th to 26th, she was banned in every single match, a first in Brawl Stars history. With a record-breaking 80 bans, Charlie set a precedent for how impactful a brawler could be, outshining even the most notorious of her predecessors. Not even in the World Finals 2024 with the dominating Kenji and Mo did they reach an all-games ban rate. But talking about Charlie, the adjustments didn't stop there. On December 12th, 2023, Supercell rolled out a major balance update to curb her overwhelming presence. The delay between her attacks was doubled, her supercharge rate was increased from 5 to 6 hits, and her hypercharge required 14 hits instead of 13 to fully charge. Her super duration was cut again, from 7 seconds to 5 seconds, and the health of her spiders was drastically reduced from 1760 to 1120 per spider. Even with these adjustments, Charlie continued to be a dominant force, leading to another round of nerfs on February 27, 2024. Her super projectile speed was reduced, making it harder for her to hit her cocoon accurately. Her hypercharge saw multiple nerfs. The damage boost was reduced to 25%, the speed boost to 26%, and the shield provided by her hypercharge was cut down to just 5%. The balancing, of course, didn't stop there. On April 23, 2024, Charlie's range was decreased from 9 tiles to 8.33 tiles, further limiting her ability to control space and engage from a safe distance. Her supercharge rate was increased once again, now requiring 7 hits instead of 6, and her hypercharge needed an additional hit to activate. On June 25, 2024, her main attack damage was reduced from 800 to 760, her hypercharge requirements were increased again, and the lifespan of her spiders was cut in half, further diminishing their effectiveness in prolonged engagements. These nearly 20 nerfs over a span of less than a year effectively brought Charlie from the pinnacle of the meta to the bottom of tier lists. Her user rate plummeted, and she was no longer the unstoppable force she once was. By the end of 2024, Charlie had become a shadow of her former self, with her usage rate dropping to the bottom 10 of all brawlers. Recognizing this, Supercell began to implement small buffs to her damage in November and December, aiming to bring her back to a more competitive state without reigniting the frustrations that came with her initial release. Her rise and fall remain one of the most dramatic in Brawl Stars history, leaving a lasting impression on players and developers alike. Before jumping into the top 3 of most overpowered brawlers on release, let's talk about honorable mentions here. The first honorable mention is Mo. Mo is a small cute rat released on August 29, 2024 as an early access offer. What made Mo so strong was both his main attack and his super. His main attack was, not kidding, almost not dodgeable since it had a long splash range which hit enemies even if not aimed properly. Mo got 8 nerfs and 0 buffs to this day, and he is now a pretty balanced brawler. Let's talk about Kenji. The sushi chef released in the same update as Mo was also quite dominating the meta. What made him so strong is that nobody could predict where his super would land, and that Kenji healed with both his super and attack. He also had a pretty strong Hosomaki healing gadget which healed 75% of his lost health from the last 5 seconds. He also has a star power similar to Fong's Shield one, where he would have a 90% damage reduction if he didn't get attacked for 5 seconds. Kenji also received some nerfs, which made him pretty balanced like Mo. The next brawler on the honorable mention list is Eve. Eve's strength was her second star power, which spawned one of her hatchlings with every single attack she hit. Not only this, her range was as long as a sniper's range, above average health and above average damage. She was quite dominant for 4 months until the deserved nerf to her star power finally came. Nowadays, she is not quite picked and below average. Our next honorable mention is Grom. Grom's mechanic that made his attack and super drop faster when dropped near him made him absolutely overpowered and game-breaking. After this issue was fixed, Grom was quite weak, which is why Supercell buffed him to the state where he would become balanced. Nowadays, he is quite underpowered, and he lacks a hypercharge at the time of recording this video. Our last honorable mention is Janet. Janet was back then a menace for around 4 months, and she continued to be quite strong for around 1 year until she dropped down the meta hard and still is suffering, even after receiving her hypercharge lately. Now, let's talk about our top 3. At third place, we have Kit, a legendary brawler who took Brawl Stars by storm upon their release on December 28, 2023. Kit's unique playstyle, which allowed them to switch between latching onto teammates or enemies, made them one of the most unique brawlers in the game. Their main attack dealt a massive 2,000 damage, and their ability to become impervious to damage when landing on enemy brawlers turned them into a nightmare to deal with. Kit's presence in the meta was overwhelming, especially in modes where control and survivability were key. What truly made Kit's spot on this list was his dominance in Showdown. After collecting around 8 power cubes, Kit could jump onto an enemy and instantly recharge his super. The stun from his super made the enemy not movable, which made him literally unkillable, since he just chained supers on the enemy. The way how he latched on enemies was also easy, since he latched onto the enemy if he hits a huge radius. Kit also becomes invulnerable while latching onto enemies or teammates, which made him even stronger than he already was. With his fast movement speed, this was an easy task for Kit. Additionally, his box gadget, which made him go invisible like Leon's super with one click, was super strong, as he could be anywhere without the enemy knowing. This gadget also had the bug at that time that it would charge Kit's super faster, which made him, again, stronger. Their opponent had no chance to react against Kit, which made Kit a terror in Showdown, as players struggled to find any counter to the cat. Just 2 weeks after Kit's release, on January 11th, 2024, Supercell implemented a series of emergency nerfs aimed at reining in Kit's dominance. The first major change was a reduction in Kit's main attack damage, bringing it down from 2,000 to 1,600. This was a significant hit to Kit's burst potential, making it harder for them to quickly eliminate squishier targets. Additionally, the number of hits required to charge Kit's super was increased from 2 to 3, slowing down their ability to chain supers and maintain pressure. One of the most impactful nerfs was the removal of Kit's invulnerability when landing on an enemy brawler. This change made it much riskier for Kit to jump, as they could no longer rely on their super for a safe entry into battles. Furthermore, Kit could no longer attach to respawned brawlers, limiting their ability to capitalize on fresh targets and reducing his effectiveness. Several bugs were also addressed in this update, further balancing Kit's abilities. A notable fix was the issue with Kit's super charge rate scaling with power cubes when attached to enemies, which previously allowed Kit to chain their super infinitely. Another fix addressed the cardboard box gadget, which had been charging Kit's super at an accelerated rate when moving, providing an unintended advantage. Kit is nowadays one of the most hated brawlers in Brawl Stars, as his latching onto a teammate ability is very overpowered and almost uncountable. Many comps like Daryl Kit or Buster Kit destroyed enemies, especially in game modes like Knockout. Kit's stun is also annoying to enemies since they can't move. Kit is considered one of the most no-skill brawlers in the game, and he is hated by everyone. Personally, I think removing the stun from his super would go a long way, and maybe with less hate towards Kit. But moving on with our second place. At second place, we have Rosa, the overpowered brawler who shook up the Brawl Stars meta upon her release in April 2019. With her fast-charging super and robust shield, Rosa became the definition of tankiness, making her nearly unkillable in battle. What set Rosa apart was her accessibility. As a rare brawler, players could easily unlock her, resulting in a flood of Rosas dominating every game mode. From gem grab to showdown, Rosa's presence was overwhelming, and for a few weeks, it seemed like the game was entirely about who had the better Rosa. Rosa's super was her most powerful ability. Upon activation, her shield provided an 80% damage reduction, turning her into an unbreakable wall. This shield lasted a whopping 6 seconds, which was more than enough time for Rosa to close the gap on enemies, soak up all incoming damage, and pummel foes into submission. Coupled with her high health and consistent damage output, Rosa became a menace, especially in modes like Brawl Ball, where her shield allowed her to push through defenses and score goals with ease. However, the dominance of Rosa could not last unchecked. Just 4 days after her debut, on April 30th, 2019, Supercell introduced the first round of nerfs. Rosa's super shield protection was reduced from 80% to 70%, a significant change aimed at making her slightly more vulnerable during her shielded state. The duration of her super was also reduced from 6 seconds to 4 seconds, limiting the time of her invincibility and giving opponents a better chance to deal damage after her shield expired. Despite these initial nerfs, Rosa continued to dominate, prompting another set of balance changes on May 21st, 2019. This time, the number of hits required to charge her super was increased from 9 to 10, making it harder for Rosa to maintain a continuous cycle of shields. This also meant that Rosa needed at least 4 ammo to charge her super. Additionally, her super duration was further decreased from 4 seconds to 3 seconds. To decrease her survivability even more, Rosa's Plant Life Star power, which provided healing in bushes, was nerfed from 300 to 200 health per second. The final wave of nerfs came on June 11, 2019. Rosa's main attack damage was reduced from 480 to 460 per punch, and the hits needed to charge her super were increased from 10 to 11. These changes finally brought Rosa to a more balanced state, reducing her overwhelming presence in matches and making her more manageable for other brawlers. Nowadays, 5 years after her release, Rosa has settled into a balanced role as a solid tank option. While she no longer dominates the meta as she once did, she remains a reliable pick for players. Let's talk about the most overpowered brawler in Brawl Stars history. Who do you think it is? Pause the video and write it in the comments now. At the top of our list, taking the crown at number 1, we have the twins Larry and Lori, who were released into the Brawl Stars on January 25, 2024. These two brought a perfect storm of overwhelming stats, making them a nightmare for any brawler to face. With thrower capabilities, they could hit enemies from nearly any angle and any part of the map, while Lori served as the perfect bodyguard for Larry, dealing massive damage and soaking up hits. Larry and Lori's release was marked by dominance, with their ability to control the battlefield unmatched. Larry's main attack could rain down destruction from a distance, while Lori, deployed as a companion, acted as a relentless shield, protecting Larry and wreaking havoc on the enemy team. The combination of Lori's durability and damage output made them almost unstoppable, leading to an outrage from players struggling to counter their overwhelming power. They were simply not killable. Pro players, which usually play the game with their teammates, expressed that they are playing with randoms to get 3 Larrys on one team. The game at the time was dominated by the twins. If a team had 1 Larry less than the other team, the team with 1 Larry less lost the game. With their overpowered first star power, all damage Larry gets will get reflected onto Lori, which made Larry literally unkillable when Lori was on the battlefield. Their second star power, which was mostly used in Heist, let Larry shit out damage on the safe whenever Lori is attacking it. The safe was down in less than 30 seconds. You could not counter them. Karo's Time, a famous YouTuber, asked on Twitter how to counter the beasts, and after the game lead, Frank responded with assassins. He received heavy backlash because the twins were simply unstoppable, even with the right assassins. The first round of nerfs came very late on February 7, 2024, after 2 weeks of dominance. Larry's health was cut down to 3,000 from 3,400, making him slightly more susceptible to enemy attacks. Lori's health was also reduced to 3,000 from 3,400, bringing him more in line with his twin. The number of hits required to charge their super increased to 8 from 5, stopping Larry to shit out Lori's. Their protocol, Protect Star Power's damage redirection, was dramatically reduced to 30% from 100%, making Larry not invincible anymore. Additionally, the protocol, Assist Star Power, was adjusted so that it no longer triggered when Lori hit pets or heist safes, limiting its utility in Heist. Despite these changes, Larry and Lori remained overpowered, prompting more adjustments on February 27, 2024. Larry's main attack damage was decreased to 700 from 840 per hit, reducing his overall damage output. The range of Larry's main attack was shortened to 7.33 tiles from 8, limiting his ability to attack from anywhere on the map. Further nerfs followed on March 25, 2024, as Larry was still showing dominance. Larry's main attack unload speed was increased to 0.3 seconds between shots from 0.15, slowing down his ability to shit out damage. Lori's damage was halved to 150 from 300 per hit, massively reducing his damage. Lori's super recharge rate was slashed by 50%, making it harder to deploy him frequently. The order. Fallback gadgets healing was reduced to 25% of their maximum health from 33%, making the insta-heal button less impactful. Even with these significant nerfs, Larry and Lori still held their ground. On November 14, 2024, another nerf dropped, reducing Larry's health further to 2,800 from 3,000, slightly increasing his vulnerability. Still today, Larry and Lori remain strong picks, which shows their power even after 12 nerfs. At that time, it was one of the worst metas we've ever had. Speaking of worst metas, you can watch this video to hear about one of the worst metas in the game at the time where Surge was released. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.